Did it say recording started?
Yeah, it says he's being recorded, so we're here. It didn't make the noise. I didn't hear
I
the
didn't make
noise.
the noise. I know.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, this is our weekly that Ahmed and I are doing, and this is week two. We're going. Ahmed's catching me up. We're going over the latest. Ahmed's been doing some writing and some posting, some tweeting, some Xing. I don't know what do you call it, Ahmed?
Zeeting, maybe you call it.
Zeeting. That's good. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming from CP headquarters downtown. Typical rainy, cloudy Seattle day. Love it, love all of it. Big coats. This guy just walked past me in a giant coat and shorts. That's Seattle right there.
That's the vibe.
That's legit Seattle. How about you, man?
I'm good. It's a little cloudy over here too. Just, just riding through this second week. It was a lot. That funding freeze was like something straight out of 2017. So I've been busy. I've been busy,
Okay.
man.
All right. So straight out of 2017, that's a perspective. Okay. So what you're saying to me is that this doesn't look like an evolved version of Trump. You think that this is a greatest hits, same as we always knew, um, and then possibly predictable Trump. Tell me about this past week.
So with the funding freeze, it seems that we're getting like they promised us they'd be more competent. They learned from the first term. While they definitely got more loyalists around them, and there's more at stake, and he's definitely more threatening. It's the same stumbles, man. They're just tripping over
Mm.
themselves. They sent out a vague, half-baked memo, send the whole country into chaos. It was big Muslim ban energy, and then
Hmm.
they sent it out half-baked, didn't really give any guidance, and then all of a sudden Medicaid portals go down in 50 states. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
and then they're like, oh, but we made exceptions here. They tried to clarify, and then it just gave it in for Democrats to step in and
Right,
really
because
like,
what immediately you have people who are being harmed that are their people, their voters, their constituents. You got people down ballot folks who are like, you're messing up my ability to win the next election, all of that stuff starts going up the chain, right?
exactly. And we found out that this OMB memo that was sent out reportedly was sent out without key White House official approval. That's what they're saying. I personally think they're
And we think
deflecting.
that's bullshit. That's what we
Yeah,
think
I
that
think I
is.
think they're deflecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're deflecting. I think they're trying to clean it up, but it was just incompetent nonsense. They said, they didn't make the clear exceptions. They just did a really blanket freeze. They
Hmm.
said Social Security and Medicare were exempt. They didn't cite Medicaid specifically, and then we saw this torrent of impact. And it's
Yeah.
like country goes into disarray. Democratic lawmakers, we could talk about like how I think they stepped up in a little bit, but this initial thing was just such a like it was you would think that they spent all this time crafting these EOs. They're supposed to like
So
be this evil mastermind, and then they come back.
these executive orders. So okay, so I will say, and this is interesting because you're coming not from I'm analyzing this for the first time now. You were so deeply intertwined in the first Trump administration that like emotionally you're like this feels the
Yes.
same. It doesn't feel like they're better. It just feels like there's more maybe, but it feels like the same slip ups and the same retractions and the same mistakes and all that stuff is coming from them. That's what we're talking about here, not just
Yeah.
the facts.
Yeah, not just that, and also, yeah, I'm feeling that way. And then it was just so many classic things that were happening. The they tried to clarify, a judge blocks it,
Yep.
and then because they need to uphold Donald's ego, the press secretary sends a tweet, and she's like, "Oh no, the memo is rescinded, but the freeze is still on." But the thing is, they had hilariously they had a court hearing moments later,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So then the
Hmm.
judge was like, well, because they sent out the rescission trying to avoid the injunction. The judge was like, well, she just said that like it's still on, so I'm gonna
Right.
grant another injunction
Yeah,
soon.
yeah.
So it's like
They
they
don't even know
just
how to use the right words. Yeah.
no, yeah. So she basically undermined them
Hmm.
by trying to save face and be like, oh, the freeze is still very much
Right.
on. But they rolled it back because they touch
Yeah.
fire, and they're being fools. Like his incompetence is like the greatest obstacle to his authoritarianism, in my opinion.
Well,
Like,
and when you say his incompetence, is it's him. as a person, and then the people he chooses and the norms and the culture
Mhm.
that he creates around him, just that incompetence is baked into the people and the system that he's building. And so
Exactly.
even like the most mundane things like how to word a memo are things that, any lawyer and, any law school student would be able to say like that, you got to use this word, these words, and not these words. And they don't
Yeah.
have that. And
I think
they
some of that I think some of that was written by ChatGPT personally, but that's just me.
well, it was written by ChatGPT, and then also, I mean, there's also Elon is basically, in throughout all of this stuff, anything that has to do with cuts or stoppage of funding, and he's, copy and pasting from his Tesla slash X,
Yeah.
Twitter playbook when he cut a bunch of staff there.
Yeah. Of
I would say that it's a little different because the Project 2025 stuff,
course.
their preparation is very clear. It's clear that like the places that they're attacking, I think they're more thorough than last year, than last term. Um, Even if they're stupid ideas, they're like thought out for further
Oh, of
down,
course. Yeah, yeah,
further
yeah,
down the
yeah.
line. They're trying. So the ham-fisted negative impact on real people's lives is still a true thing that's happening. We're, our side is pushing back where we can, but still there's still, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are going to be impacted by this even as they
Yeah.
stumble out of the gate here.
Exactly. And you're spot on about the preparation. Like obviously the Project 2025 thing, I'll write about it in my newsletter endlessly and talk about it
Hmm.
this past weekend. And it's
By
just
the way,
like
subscribe to the Substack. What is it again?
ahmedbaba.news.
AhmedBaba.news.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I was on with, I'm not trying to humble brag, but I was on with Rev Al Sharpton talking about it. So
With
check
the
it out
Rev. That's
with
right.
Rev.
That's
So
right.
that we were talking about Project 2025, but basically this is like they have their plan in place. Their intent behind the incompetent memo was to test the boundaries of executive power. They were
Yep.
hoping they were trying to challenge the Impoundment Act of 1974, and they
Hmm.
were trying to basically they believe that's unconstitutional. Russell Vought, who was the author in Project 2025, he wasn't even sworn in yet as OMB director, but they were already doing this. So the intent and like their overall plans are deeply authoritarian, but they're being plagued by the same incompetent tendencies they had in the first term. So that's like they're stumbling on their way. Like it's a little heartening because it's like they have these horrible plans and they have this terrible
Hmm.
intent, but then they just can't. He got this coalition of grifters together that are tripping over each other in a lot of ways.
Right. Okay. So tell me what you think is going to come from this, because I think one of the things that we all realize is that when you get people who are impacted by this, who are on their side, you start to move people to our side, to the resistance in whatever form that is. And it doesn't have to be the Democratic side. It could be independents who are pushing back. It could be moderate Republicans who are pushing back, moderate conservatives. So what do you see as some of the early result of some of their slip ups?
Well, what we saw, especially during the funding freeze, like as a journalist that was covering it, I was finding that some of the most reliable information was coming from Democratic lawmakers. So they were the ones who were posting about the effects their constituents were
Yeah.
seeing. So they were
Yeah,
like,
which
yeah,
I didn't give them enough credit. Okay, I didn't give them enough credit because I've kind of turned off some mainstream news channels. That's why I've got you, and that's why I've got this. But apparently they went hard. They went hard
they
in the
went
paint on
real
this.
hard, especially Senator Chris Murphy and even Ron
Okay, yeah,
Wyden. The
yeah.
Medicaid down in all 50 states headline came from Ron Wyden. He
Okay,
was the one that was like, my office is confirming. So like some of them were operating as, information disseminators, journalists in some aspect, reporting what their constituents were saying. And then that got journalists more informed. So by the time Caroline Levitt had her presser, the journalists were in there hammering her on all these questions because Democrats and other people had helped arm them with the information. And then immediately lawsuits were flowing. And
dude,
then,
I love this. So what this is the Dems are not waiting for a committee to tell them what words to use or what to talk about. They're not
yeah,
waiting for it to come from consultants or some bullshit like that. Like they're like, what are my people saying? What do I think? And I'm putting a message out there. That needs to be what we do.
Exactly. They're saying with their chest, like we were talking about last time,
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
said like
yeah.
the truth doesn't have to be poll tested. They're
Mm-hmm.
out here. They just said it. They were just saying how they felt. And like in real time, Chris Murphy was like debunking what was being posted. Like a White House would say, "Oh, well, this is Medicaid's exempted," and Chris Murphy would say, "Don't believe this. My
Yeah.
constituents are reporting that Medicaid is down, that Head
Mm-hmm.
Start is down," and it was really, and some people were still saying Democrats had disappeared or weren't doing anything, but as when I was in there in the like trying to sift through the flow of information, it was their voices that drove all of the media coverage. That,
Okay, so
that
the way I see this too then is if the Dems are going to actually do this, then independent media and media on the left, to the extent that there is a growing um there's a bunch of people with deep pockets and plans on the comm side that are launching things very quickly here on the left. They should be elevating that message. Like they should be
yeah.
immediately covering that, and they should be telling people, hey, this is going on. These people are in the trenches and they're talking about their constituents and they're keeping us updated on a regular basis and they're fighting on what is now the front lines if they're doing so in
Mhm.
Congress.
No, exactly. And then and that's kind of what we saw a little bit of. We saw a lot of independent journalists and then mainstream journalists and everyone kind of picking up this message because everyone was looking for information on what was going on, and we weren't
Mm-hmm.
getting that from the Trump admin. So
Okay.
Democrats filled that information void in a real way. And we've been critical of them and how they've been acting, but this time they played a key role. And then meanwhile, Democratic AGs were suing and nonprofit
Yeah.
groups were suing. And it
Yep.
was like classic 2017 resistance vibe. And it was like everyone's been saying the resistance is dormant. In that moment, it was like we just stopped this thing from happening.
Yeah.
Whereas if they had obviously if the Trump admin had been smarter, then maybe it would have went through.
Right.
But
Right.
we took advantage of their incompetence and their stumbles, and then now the thing is rescinded. And he's not a dictator, right? If he was a
Mm-hmm.
dictator, that would have went through.
Right. Right. He's not a dictator yet.
Yet.
um, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had this spending freeze thing. Um, the other big news item that happened, and this is directly tied to the cuts, the headcount cuts in government. Um, allegedly, I guess. Is this still up for debate? I don't know. We think it on our side, but the plane crash that
Yeah.
happened in DC.
Yeah, we don't know exactly. We can't say definitively if the freeze or the cuts had an impact. What we do know so far is that the FAA, obviously has had their cuts and their freezes, but apparently there was a air traffic controller that was supposed to be two staff for two people, but they
Yeah.
sent one of them home early. I don't know. I can't definitively tie it to Trump, but what I do
Okay.
know is that it was not DEI.
It wasn't DI.
That's what I
I
know.
want to say so. Larcy strongly believes that it's 100% Trump and Elon's fault, right? The air traffic
Could
control
it could
thing.
be.
Trump and Elon. She's over here 100%. I could hear her saying things here and there.
No,
Um,
it could be, but as a journalist, I don't want to get sued for defamation. So I
oh,
I
let's
say
go. That's right.
so I gotta say
Allegedly.
I gotta say allegedly and maybe
Got it.
possibly we don't know definitively thus
Okay.
far,
All right.
but
All right.
I think it's more likely that than
Okay.
DEI because imaginary black people like people who were watching this probably saw it because everyone did, but Homeboy went out and was talking about how DEI was to blame for the crash without even knowing
Okay.
the race of
So
any of
you're talking about Trump's press conference, right? Was that
yes
today or yesterday?
yesterday.
Okay, so this is Thursday. And Trump did a press conference and he's like, this is because we're too focused on diverse hiring, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, he came out there just blaming diverse hiring, and then he specifically mentioned the hiring of people with disabilities, even though it was a
Oh, he
program.
said that?
Yeah, he said that there's a focus on. He basically read the FAA website, which is interesting
Ah,
because this all these policies were in place during his first
during
term
his
too. But he blamed Biden, and
right,
and then we
right.
found out obviously it's not relevant, but reportedly, the pilot and the I feel even terrible even talking about these
Hmm,
people's races. They died, right? But it's like they weren't black people or women, from
hmm,
what I can gather, and it's disgusting that we even have to respond,
right,
to that and even talk about the race of these people. They
right,
were probably qualified. It was an accident.
right.
And he's just sitting here trying to find a way. And then JD Vance was on there saying,
That's what Larcy just said. Larcy's like, JD Vance said she might
Yeah,
have to
JD
come over
Vance said
here.
like, "Oh, just the existence of the programs stress people out." So therefore, it's like, I guess black people in the office stress these white pilots out.
Oh my God.
Oh man,
Wow. 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 Okay. All right.
Larcy got to
Well,
join the pod with the ad
I
libs.
know she's one more thing she's gonna have to jump over here. So I mean, these are we know the Trump administration is going to say outrageous things. They're starting to now, and we're living it, and so it feels different. I guess my thing on some of this is we knew that this was coming. We knew what it would look like. We knew who they would target, and we had lived through this before. So, uh, I think I don't know. We should be outraged enough to take action, but not um, to stay like stressed about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's kind of what my message is it should not be shock because we saw this coming and we talked about what would happen and we lived through the first term, but it should be a response. It should be a response that is strong. It should be a response that has a lot of energy behind it and emotion and galvanizes people. It
Mm.
should not just be this like traumatizing hit to our psyche though every time, huh?
Yeah, no, exactly. You're right. And it should be something where we take in stride and just kind of like, we respond to it and message against it. And a lot of people did. Like we're starting to see now Democrats, Buttigieg immediately responding and others.
Yeah.
And it was really good. Like, and also the media, I was watching on CNN, and right after, the aviation correspondent was visibly pissed after the presser and was like, it is not only was that was unhinged, it was
Mm,
unprofessional. It was, and I've looked up the guy. He doesn't have a history of doing this. He was just infuriated at the idea that it would be blamed on DEI. So we saw immediate pushback from journalists, from everybody. And then I'm seeing just like, I was like, okay, what are regular people thinking? So I went to the shade room on Instagram's
okay.
comments, and because the election's over, the
Yep.
bots are gone. The pro-Trump bots are gone. So
Yep.
it's all just black people, regular people.
Hmm.
They're pissed. Everyone's like
Mm,
really infuriated about what he's saying because it's overt racism. And I
right.
feel like this is the kind of thing that could lose the Republicans a big share of the black vote because it's overt. Like it's now the racism isn't just like, saying S-hole countries like he did
Hmm.
before, right? It's actually talking about it's inflicting policies that take away black people's opportunities.
Right.
That's the message. And that's why it's hard.
Yeah, and I think that that mixed with a lot of regret, a lot of regret either for not voting, which more people on the left didn't do, and voting for Trump to, some slim degree that more black people voted for Trump. I think that them seeing now that he's very truly come everything that we warned them about is happening. I think that's where you start to see movement towards us. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be looking at in like the Wisconsin election, where we're going to be knocking on doors in black neighborhoods in
Yeah.
Milwaukee, trying to get the vote out for this liberal justice. And then in the Virginia elections this year, also in the kind of suburb areas where we're going to be seeing how much of these people either regret their vote or regret not voting that were
Yeah.
Democrats. So we'll see that. I feel hopeful seeing the response to some of this, and if
Yeah.
the trend continues that they put out these policies that turn people against them. Okay, all right, where are we at on time here, man?
I
I think
think we're I
this
think
is
we're
it.
good. I think we're at 20. I mean, we can either
Okay.
we can end and do the other segment, or we can.
We should end this now. So this is a part one, and then we're gonna go into some of Tom Bonnier's stuff that we promised that we go into. Thanks for catching me up for the week, man. It feels like it's been a month.
Yeah.
This is barely the end of January here, and I'm feeling pretty tired from this stuff. But also, this is what we expected, so we got to keep on.
We got to keep on. And honestly, after this week, although it was really hard, I'm seeing glimmers of hope and
Yeah.
glimmers of like life in the opposition. So we just got to keep at it.
Yep. Learning how to push back, man. All
Yep.
right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.